Hey all, last video for Prince Ombra. Wow. Here we go. Epilogue. After all these years, to this very day, Bentley still calls me Slally. The last crusts of this winter's ice still lie in the shadowed places of the forest and on the sides of the road where the sunlight doesn't fall. The wind is cold, but in it you can taste the first wet balminess of spring. I do believe that I will live to see another summer. We old people are full of hope. Dietrich Christine's hopes were realized. He lived for 11 more years and died with dignity. Bentley didn't need him any longer, but the old man's work wasn't done. He knew, from all the mythology he'd read, that every tale has its teller. And he knew that I was supposed to be Bentley's rememberer. So the old man became my teacher. I learned much of what he had learned about mythology during his long lifetime. Then I went beyond him. I studied at 3 universities and learned 12 languages, 7 of them no longer spoken anywhere. I never married. I traveled the world to see all the things Dr. Christine had seen, so that I would be able to understand fully the purpose of my life. I saw the symbols on cave walls in Spain and France. I saw legends shimmer in the glyphs and stellae of the tombs of the Nile kings. I spent many years in great libraries, reading and interpreting the tales that other rememberers had left behind them. Then, when my mother died, I returned to Stonehaven to look after Richard. Their life together had been happy. Something that lingered after her persuaded him that she was waiting for him somewhere, so he didn't feel abandoned. We played chess together. From Richard, I gathered my second treasure of knowledge. I took a doctorate in mathematics at the university in the years before he retired. I taught there, after he died, until my own retirement 9 years ago. McGraw is gone. Mrs. Talley and Elias Cutter have left the world. Polly married, and she's now a grandmother. Joe Persis became manager of the freezing plant on the town wharf. I saw him when I went into the village to get the mail this morning, and I asked him if any more snow was likely. "Not likely, Miss Drake, ma'am," he said. He's hopeless. He'll never stop calling me ma'am. Bentley is still in love with his childhood. Even though he will be 75 in November, there is so much of the boy in him yet. Not that my brother is childish. Rather, he looks out in the world with the enthusiasm of a boy. 2 years ago, he decided to take up ocean sailing. His wife, Adele, and I told him that he was too old. He just grinned and said, "Nah." He took up ocean sailing with 2 other men. His gray hair falls over one side of his forehead. He began to limp again ever so slightly after he turned 70. The doctors did remarkable things to his leg in 3 operations when he was 13 and 14. I remember visiting him in the hospital with Dr. Christine the night after the first operation. Bentley was lying on his bed, wide-eyed with pain. Dr. Christine talked to him and then said, "You will please cry for a while. It will make you feel better. Also me." Then Bentley cried because his leg hurt. He still, to this day, wears the tweed jackets and bow ties of his young manhood. He is a passionate baseball fan, and the World Series tickets he gives me for my birthday every year have become a family joke. But Adele and I enjoy the games when they're near enough to get to. We are stirred up by Bentley's enthusiasm. Last year, his second son, Richard, took over the insurance agency that Bentley and 2 of his friends established in 1998. Bentley and Adele came up to Stonehaven often in the winter. We all spend the summers here in the house together. Their grandchildren are always in and out. We are what used to be called a close family. It's hard to know exactly what Bentley remembers. It's been easier for me to deduce what he has forgotten. He remembers nothing about the time before he was born. That's obvious when dinner-table conversation turns to religion and other such matters. If anybody asks him about the little scar on his right cheekbone, he tells about the day he fell and hurt himself when we were playing on the cliff. Over the years, the story has expanded a bit. The current version is that he nearly fell off the cliff. His favorite story about our childhood on the northern coast is the time he ran away from home when we were both 8. He says he can't remember why he did it, but he recalls spending the night by himself out on the uplands before McGraw found him playing in Empson's stone yard. He says he was worried he'd catch hell from my mother and Richard when he got home, but he didn't. As he grew into manhood, his face and body assumed their final forms. I noticed something. It was the night before he and Adele were married. After a dinner party, Bentley and I took a walk. As we were coming up the front steps of Adele's parents' house, the porch light fell on Bentley's face in such a way as to deepen every shadow. I stopped and looked at him. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Do you know," I said, "you've got a cleft in your upper lip." "So?" "It's just that I never noticed it before." He grinned. "Of course I have a cleft, dopey. Everybody does." Willie Bill vanished from Stonehaven, and nobody ever saw him again. The seasons arrive, fade, and return for another year. Much has changed in Stonehaven and on the northern coast, and much remains the same. I cannot recall whether they ever fixed the potholes on Main Street. Perhaps the present ones are new. There's a health food store with its own garden where the Stonehaven House Hotel stood years ago. We now have 5 policemen. In McGraw's day we had 3. McGraw, his wife, and Dick Amberstam came to my high school graduation. I went to McGraw's funeral. Bentley came back to Stonehaven for it because I said he had to. I am an old woman, and I know where I will go next, because once Bentley Ellicott knew, and he told me. Bentley has forgotten his secret, but I have held mine for the years of my life. Now I'm supposed to tell it to you, because nobody can understand the stories the rememberers leave behind, unless our secret is known. This is what it is. The heroes are born, they live their lives, meet their destinies, and some day die as do all other mortals, but their heart returns, like the seasons, for another year. Prince Ombra comes in his terrible seasons. He lives, he fights his battles, and he returns to his storm in the vortex, where his minds afflict our earthly passage, even as every god ever worshipped blesses it. But mortals must remember this terrible lord and the warriors who come forth to fight heaven's war against him. If Prince Ombra is killed in battle against the borrowed heart, he will be reborn at the core of the hurricane. But if men remember, in his next life Ombra will be weaker, and weaker yet again in the life after that one. If the ancient stories of heroes are told and retold, there will come at last a day whose dawn breaks with the radiance of perfection itself, and all men will know it, because the Lord of all our nightmares will, upon that day, have surrendered his last life to the darkness around him. This is why there have been 1,001 rememberers like me. The end. This was fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope maybe we can do this again sometime, if you're up for it.